In 2016, Islam Makhachev, who's now a decorated UFC champion, failed a drug test. Not a rumor, not speculation, but a confirmed positive sample for a banned substance called Meldonium. But what most fans don't know is that it wasn't a typical case. It was tied to legitimate medical history, including an earlier heart surgery. But still, the test result raised questions across MMA, landing Makhachev in a controversy that disappeared almost as quickly as it began.
Hello guys, my name is Islam Makhachev. I fight at UFC.
Meldonium, or mildronate, was created in the 1970s in Latvia as a treatment for heart and circulation problems. It improves how the body uses oxygen, helping the heart work more efficiently, especially in people with cardiovascular disease. In Eastern Europe, doctors prescribe it for chest pain, heart failure, or irregular heartbeats, exactly the kind of condition Islam had years before his failed test. But the same properties that help heart patients also caught the attention of athletes. Meldonium can shift your metabolism from burning fat to burning glucose, a more oxygen-efficient process. That means better endurance, quicker recovery, and less fatigue. Even though science is mixed on how much it really boosts performance, by 2015, it was so widespread that WADA finally banned it starting January 1st of 2016. Within months, over 170 athletes tested positive for the same substance, from tennis star Maria Sharapova to Russian boxers, skaters, and wrestlers. Makhachev just happened to be one of them. In April of 2016, just before a scheduled fight against Drew Dober, Makhachev failed an out-of-competition test for Meldonium. He was pulled from the card immediately and given a provisional suspension while USADA investigated. At that point, Meldonium had been banned for only 4 months. The confusion was global, and no one knew exactly how long it stayed in the body. But as details emerged, Makhachev's situation turned out to be very different than most. USADA later revealed that he had undergone a radiofrequency ablation procedure for ventricular arrhythmia, a type of heart rhythm disorder, in December of 2014.
Сердце билось, как у обычного человека, и в другом месте еще один скачок давало, как лишний раз у меня сердце билось. И просто это место прижиганием убрали просто эту проблему и все.
То есть этого больше не существует,
да,
все в порядке?
Да, это все я провел эту маленькую операцию, и после этого не было никаких проблем.
Following that surgery, his doctor prescribed Meldonium in late 2015 as a preventative measure against a possible relapse. He took it for about 4 weeks, then stopped before the ban took effect on January 1st of 2016. After reviewing the case, USADA determined that the trace amount of Meldonium in his April 2016 sample was consistent with use before the ban, not after. They described his levels as extremely low and ruled that Makhachev bore no fault or negligence. His provisional suspension was lifted within weeks and no further action was taken. So officially, it wasn't cheating. It was a perfect storm of timing, a new rule, a legitimate medical prescription, and a trace reading that fell into WADA's gray zone. To understand why Makhachev's case caused confusion, you have to look at 2016 as a whole. Hundreds of athletes tested positive that year, many claiming they'd stopped using it months earlier. Even WADA admitted it didn't fully understand the drug's clearance rate. They issued guidance in April 2016 saying that small amounts detected before March 1st might indicate legal use before the ban. And on June 30th, 2016, they formalized that policy, essentially clearing athletes like Makhachev. Meldonium's inclusion on the banned list was scientifically debated too. Its inventor, Ivars Kalvins, argued it wasn't a performance enhancer at all, just a cardioprotective drug. Other experts, including WADA consultants, said it might give a marginal endurance benefit, though nothing like steroids or EPO. By July of 2016, Makhachev was cleared and eligible to fight again. The UFC reinstated him quietly, and he went back to competition as if nothing had happened. He didn't lose any of his wins, he didn't face fines, and he never failed another test. But the story still lingers because of how fast it disappeared, and how differently fans might have reacted if it had been anyone else. It's easy to forget that, at that time, USADA was suspending huge names: John Jones, Brock Lesnar, and Mirko Cro Cop. But Makhachev's case, despite being public, slipped through almost unnoticed, because legally speaking, it was resolved without fault. Years later, another name from the same training circle popped up in the headlines: Usman Nurmagomedov, Makhachev's teammate and cousin of Khabib. In 2023, the California State Athletic Commission suspended Usman for 6 months and fined him $50,000 after testing positive for a prohibited substance. According to his manager, it came from a prescription medication that contained a bound compound and he wasn't aware of it. Again, no anabolic steroids, no confirmed performance enhancer, but just a medical misunderstanding. Sound familiar? That doesn't necessarily mean that they were cheating, but it does show a fine line between a medical prescription and a banned test result. Fast forward to today, and Makhachev is on top of the MMA world. He's a 2-division threat and one of the most dominant lightweights ever. But most fans don't even remember the 2016 Meldonium case, because officially it never turned into a scandal. He followed the process, proved his case, and moved on. But it's worth remembering as a reminder of how complicated anti-doping rules can get, and how easily an athlete can end up caught in the crossfire between medicine and regulation. Still, intent is the gray area every anti-doping story lives in. Some fans argue that any trace of a banned drug, medical or not, raises red flags. Others point out that the line between treatment and enhancement is razor thin, especially in combat sports where recovery is everything. Could Meldonium have given an advantage? Possibly, if taken close to a fight. Could his case have been purely medical? I mean, sure, the documentation suggests yes, but the timing, right as the ban took effect, made it hard for skeptics to ignore. Even WADA officials admitted that confusion over detection windows created room for doubt. And then add in the wider backdrop, the spike of positives among Russian and Eastern European athletes that same year and historically, and it's easy to see why some observers still raise an eyebrow. Whether that suspicion is fair or not is up for you to decide, but it shows how trust in anti-doping depends less on lab results and more on perception. The Meldonium case sits in a strange space between guilt and innocence, a reminder that failed tests doesn't always mean cheating, but it doesn't always mean nothing either. Maybe this was a simple overlap between legitimate treatment and new regulation. Maybe it's proof that anti-doping systems sometimes punish medicine more than malice. What's certain is that it exposed just how messy the fight for clean sport can get when science, timing, and perception collide. Today, Makhachev's career speaks for itself. He's one of the most complete fighters on the planet, and the only trace of controversy left is a footnote from a chaotic year in anti-doping history. But that's what makes it worth remembering, not because it proves anything, but because it shows how quickly one task can shift from scandal to silence, depending on who's holding the belt. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment for the sake of the algorithm. I'll see you guys next time.